Thank you for coming to our July 24th program for Green Valley Democrats. We welcome Octaviana, Trujillo, and Verlon Jose. We're very happy to have them here. I'm going to turn this over to Phil Silvers. He is responsible for bringing them to us. So Phil, can you take it?
Good afternoon, friends. Our speakers would like to show you a video that they have collaborated on entitled Healing the Border, a project. And so we'll begin with that, and then we'll introduce Dr. Trujillo, and she will make her presentation and have a Q&A. And then after that, I will introduce Verlon Jose. Let's run with the video.
Today, the borderlands are literally built out. More than 700 miles of sensitive ecosystems have been carved out and destroyed to make room for a border wall. But for thousands of years, long before the foundation of the two neighboring nation states, these borderlands have been home to indigenous communities who know no boundaries. Only their lands and their traditions that bind them to the land and to each other. And now, at a time when everyone else seems to have an opinion on what should happen at the border, we want you to listen to our voices.
El territorio del OTAN llega hasta más o menos del río Salado, que es Casa Grande, toda esa parte antes de llegar a Phoenix, hasta Hermosillo, ese territorio OTAN. Bueno, es la nación más grande que hay ahorita y que ha existido por miles y miles de años y que fue la única que no se rindió ante todo lo que estaba pasando cuando vinieron y colonizaron todos los españoles, ya después llegaron los gringos y gracias a Dios me siento honrado de ser descendiente de la tribu Tohono O'odham.
What we're doing is we're doing these interviews because we believe that the testimonies and the stories of the lived experience of the peoples are so important in the preservation and the protection of our treasured cultural and spiritual reserves.
Good morning. My name is Lorraine Marcus Eiler. I live in Ajo, Arizona, and I'm going to be talking about my relatives, the people that I descend from, who are Hiachitatam, and who used to live at Quito Springs.
We are tribal and faith-based communities who stand united in our concern, grief, outrage about the border wall. We believe the destruction of still living place-based spiritual practices at or near the border is a moral assault on the sanctity of all of our cultural and spiritual practices. A direct assault on all life. The border wall has disrupted our religious expressions, damaged our sacred sites, destroyed ceremonial plants, and threaten our sacramental waters. In Arizona and California, the Autumn and the Kumeyaay have seen their sacred springs depleted and dried up. Seasonal floods now threaten Autumn communities living near dams and arroyos in Sonora, Mexico. In the past year, burial sites, artifacts have been bulldozed by government contractors, even though their sensitive locations were fully provided to officials for months in advance. Along the Arizona border, we witnessed how Quito Springs, whose waters have been used ceremonially for millennia, have been seriously damaged from border wall construction and water pumping by the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and the Army Corps of Engineers. Quito Springs is the only source of water for humans, endangered wildlife, and rare oasis plants for 20 miles in any direction. During the wall construction, more than 84,000 gallons of water was withdrawn each day from the aquifers of the desert wilderness to mix concrete for the wall. At Quito Springs, the water level dropped more than 3 feet. We call for restoration and mitigation of all of the damaged springs and waterways that are critical to our native cultures and to wildlife. In California, the Kumeyaay have seen their sacred Jacumba springs dry up.
Some of these areas we wouldn't be disturbing anyway because of their sacredness. We wouldn't go there unless we were prepared ourselves and asked for permission from the Creator. But these people, they just go there and destroy things, they move things out of the way, they uproot important plants, and they have affected the waterways, and it's just heartbreaking.
We call for the removal of segments of the wall that have interfered with the flow of water, animal migrations, pilgrimage trails, and trade between nations. We want to see an end to groundwater extraction and artificial lighting in wildlife refuges and other sensitive areas. We urge our governments to reinvest in restoring key cultural, ecological areas and habitats, including replanting saguaros in destroyed areas.
Pues el muro, yo digo que no debe de estar en la reserva. Le digo por qué. Porque afectaría a todas las tradiciones de nosotros, las ceremonias, porque son sitios sagrados. Porque, oiga, haz de cuenta que nosotros vamos a sentir que nos están partiendo el corazón, porque pues son tierras que defendemos de hace muchos años. Antes hacían fiesta ahí en San Francisquito, las ceremonias de todo. Ahora no se hace nada, no se puede hacer nada.
The border wall has also blocked our pilgrimages and our ability to practice our sacred saguaro ceremony, seasonal ceremonies, and celebrations with our families. The border wall has disrupted relationships between our communities. Sacred salt pilgrimages of the Octaviana Autumn, Dawn Autumn, Heted Autumn that crisscross the border, including Quito, are being blocked by the border wall, causing this sacred journey to cease on its traditional route that has been for millennia. The pilgrimage is key rite of passage for young men, and salt harvested from the Sea of Cortez is used in healing ceremonies.
No se están recorriendo lo que es los senderos originales ¿Por qué? Porque están bloqueando con el muro. Y la verdad pues me siento yo muy triste, enojado, me duele mucho porque es algo que mis ancestros lo pelearon pues para que estuviera generación tras generación.
The Northern families living on both sides of the border grieved the loss of contact and relationships between their families because of the wall.
Era muy importante y es importante, por ejemplo, el día de San Francisquito, eso, un mes antes empezábamos a carrear leña, a carrear agua porque se carreaba agua, o sea, todo porque nosotros creíamos en eso. Yo no conozco otros, y ahora con el muro va a ser mucho menos, o sea, que va a parar nuestra cultura, va a parar con nuestros hijos, o sea, ya eso ya no va a poder ser, ya no le vamos a enseñar a nosotros, a nuestros hijos, ni tampoco ir y venir por la cuestión de San Francisquito. San Francisquito es algo, está una capilla y, o sea, hay muchas cosas que eran de nosotros y ya se nos quitó porque quieren un muro. O sea, ¿quién quiere el muro? Es gente que no es de allí. No pueden ellos opinar, yo digo, no deberían de opinar porque no es tierra de ellos.
I feel like they don't recognize us as a present people. We're either something in a history book that's really fascinating, or we're some kind of some kind of pedestal, little oh, this is a pretty Indian, look at them, kind of thing, but we don't have actual meaning to them.
Recording in progress.
And as we witness how current border wall construction has continued to violate tribes' religious freedoms, we are calling for justice. We are proposing solutions, not just legitimate grievances. Yeah. Ida is Haitioaga. These are our stories.
Thank you for that wonderful video on healing the border, Verlon and Octaviana. Dr. Trujillo will go first to accommodate her schedule today. Octaviano Trujillo is professor, founder, and chair of Applied Indigenous Studies at Northern Arizona University. Previously, she was director of the Center for Indian Education at Arizona State University. Octaviana is an internationally recognized scholar on indigenous peoples. Her work has taken her to India, the Bedouins of the Negev Desert in Israel, the United Nations in Geneva, Northern Ireland, Bolivia, Guatemala, Colombia, and Dr. Trujillo was the first chairwoman of the Pascua Yaqui tribe back in the early 1990s. Octaviana, we look forward to your message. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you for the invitation to be part of this conversation. I'm happy that Verlon, Jose, and I have been part of a year-long Healing the Border project. And this team produced the video that you have seen now, and we hope to have wider distribution of the video very soon. I'm just going to touch base, just a little information about Arizona and our history. Most of you know that there are 22 federally recognized tribal nations here in the state of Arizona. And I would say roughly about 1/3 of the land base is Indian country. That means that about 1/3 of the land base here in Arizona are reservation lands, what I call Indian country. And the population is 5.7% here in Arizona, the Native American population, very close to 6%. Citizenship came to us in 1924, but we were not allowed to vote in 1924. The suffrage, the right to vote, did not happen until 1948. Back in 1928, there was a lawsuit by Peter Porter, Pima man from Gila River Indian community, just north of us. And it went to the Arizona Supreme Court because there was a process of not allowing Native Americans here in the state to vote. Ultimately, they were denied the vote in 1928 because of the status that American Indians had because of federal guardianship. And so that meant that under this guardianship, that means we were not capable of making decisions on our own. Therefore, we were denied the vote in 1928. It wasn't until 1947 that Frank Harrison, a veteran of World War II, he and the tribal chairman, Harry Austin, decided that they were going to go to Maricopa County, and they walked up to the registrar's office and they wanted to sign up to vote, or they wanted to become eligible to vote here in Arizona. Of course, it was denied. Their lawyers then submitted legal documents, but petition, and it went all the way to the Arizona Supreme Court. So it was not until July 15th, 1948, that all three Supreme Court justices voted unanimously to give American Indians in the state of Arizona the right to vote. Mind you, there were many briefs in support of American Indians here in Arizona to vote, led by the National Congress of American Indians and, of course, ACLU, among other organizations. Interesting that one of the judges on that particular decision, on that case, was the father of Mo Udall, and many of us know who Mo Udall is to the history of Arizona and certainly his representation here in Southern Arizona. But even back in 1948, it was very difficult for American Indians to vote. There were still legal barriers. Obviously, there were provisions in who could vote. Of course, they had to adhere to age, residencies, ability to write and read the Constitution without prompting. And so at that time, 80 to 90% of the American Indians that could vote did not meet these requirements, to a large part due to illiteracy. Certainly thereafter, back in 1965, there was the Federal Voting Rights Act, and that allowed a little bit more of these barriers to be brought down, but not all. Today, those barriers still exist. Many of you know that in Arizona, we have many rural communities. Rural communities where going to a polling site may take you a few hours to get there in order for you to cast your ballot, your votes. There are many other barriers. When we look at many, again, of the rural reservation-based families, many of them do not have street addresses. You know, they have P.O. boxes. Therefore, about 26% of Native Americans here in Arizona are not on the U.S. Postal Service carrier routes. Compare that to about 96% of all other non-Native voters here in Arizona. Slightly more than 1% of Native American voters in Arizona are on the permanent early voting list. And you compare that to about 80% of non-Native American voters here in Arizona. So we know that these barriers, challenges are very acute when it comes to getting the Native American vote out during our elections, both local, state, and national. And many of you are quite engaged with what's happening in our Arizona state legislature. And again, you know, the suppression of our votes. And so I have included, and I'm going to, I've sent it to you all in this chat. I think it went to everyone. There are two links that give more information about the For the People Act. And so there are petitions that you as an individual can sign to urge the senators to pass For the People Act. The House has already passed this particular legislation. We now need the Senate to pass this very important legislation, For the People Act. The other thing that's happening now, and I was trying to find those hearing dates, and I believe they are they're on many websites, are the hearings on redistricting. So that is something that's very important to all of us, are to attend the hearings on redistricting. And I think for Pima County, that's going to be happening next week. So I'm going to stop there for a few minutes to see if there are any comments or questions about our history in Arizona, the Native American history with regards to voting and the right to vote, and what we have done to really provide more opportunities in getting the American Indian vote out at each election period. There is a question by Sandy: how are the tribes assisted to vote? Some of you might be familiar with the Intertribal Council of Arizona. They represent all the tribes in Arizona except the Navajo Nation, but they do have a strong relationship with the Navajo Nation. And they have dedicated staff and many programs and partnerships in getting information out about voting and how to register to vote, and how they can get to those voting sites, and what the process is if you want to be part of the early voting list. So that's the Intertribal Council of Arizona. You can go to their website, and they have lots of programs, and one of them includes voting and voter education on their website.
All right.
Udall's father, what did Mo Udall? He was a member of the Arizona Supreme Court at the time. I believe that there were 3 members, and he gave a very important statement when the 3 justices of the Supreme Court unanimously voted to allow Native Americans the right to vote, giving them the right to vote. So he was one of the Supreme Court justices at the time. Also, do the casinos assist? Well, yes, they do. Each casino, class 3 gaming casinos in the state of Arizona, they give funds to a lot of projects. They give a lot of funds to cities and counties, as well as to foundations, nonprofits. And I believe they also provide, certainly the Pasquayaki tribe of Arizona does have an individual that will develop those partnerships with other organizations and entities to help to get the vote out and to provide this important voter education. So yes, our tribe does that. I believe other tribes as well. By looking at the ITCA website, you'll see how each tribe has contributed to this very important education for voting.
Okay, and do you see that?
I believe that the names have to do with the names of the petitioners. The first one in 1928, I believe it was the Peter Porter. His name was on it. The 1947, which, you know, it was resolved, or I mean, the case was decided in 1948, but it was started in 1947, has both names, Frank Harrison and Harry Austin.
Okay, is there anything else on that?
No, what you may want to do to get more information, there is a YouTube, and if you go again to the ITCA website, they have under that whole area called programs or initiatives, there's a lot of information with regards to voting, voter education, lots of information there, best practices that are used by Gila River Indian Community, Fort McDowell, and others that play an important role during this time period. There is a short video that really takes you to through those historical time periods. So that's one way of really looking at the names, because they're listed there. And you can actually run the video and then stop the video if you want to actually get more information about those cases.
I always thought that the Native Americans had quite a bit of legal rights and agency over the use of their land. So I always expected that they would file a lawsuit and win and stop the wall. Yet it didn't happen. Why? What happened?
I believe that there were those, the litigation by many, including tribal nations. And that question you can ask directly to Verlon Jose, because he is more aware than I am about the legal documents. And for example, the hearing where Chairman Ned Norris presented with regards to the wall this past year. And so, you know, he can talk about what happened with those legal documents and when he comes to this part of the program.
Octaviana, this is Phil. The recent victory of Attorney General Brnovich in the Supreme Court is further punishing to Native peoples in Arizona. Is there any workaround, any mitigation of that anti-harvesting and so forth that so many Native people, especially in our large reservations, really need to be able to vote? Any workaround?
There is now, from my understanding, various groups that are organizing to really address those issues, because there are many. I see another question that was put forth by someone with the Green Valley Democrats, and that is, are there drop boxes on tribal lands for ballots? That is a question, and that is, there are, I don't believe that all tribes have that. There might be some tribes that do have drop boxes, but certainly the Pascua Yaqui tribe of Arizona does not. That's the website for the Intertribal Council of Arizona.
ITCAON?
Online.com. Yeah, that's the website for the Intertribal Council of Arizona.
Okay.
Yeah, ITCA online. Yeah, that is the Intertribal Council of Arizona website. If you want to find out, there's a great video on there that explains that the history, as Dr. Trujillo was talking about, in our struggles to get recognized to vote, and in the cases, it mentions the cases in there. So if you get a chance, you can go kind of looking around in there. ITCA online. Thank you.
I don't have that at hand, but I know that there was a great effort this last presidential election to get the vote out. And I believe that percentage did increase from the previous presidential election.
My question is, in addition to signing petitions urging the Senate to pass the For the People Act, what do you recommend that I and others who are in this video today, what do you recommend that we do to help heal the border?
One of the things that we were trying to do, and then and it was very positive, but in the end, the presidential election kind of came, and that took precedent with many of the elected officials. We were trying to get a congressional hearing on the border, especially there by Quito Baquito, so that there could be a better understanding of our congressional leaders on the urgency to address the wall and the habitat, the sacred site. And that's what we're trying to do. And I believe that that would be very helpful if we have a congressional hearing to listen to the people about what has happened to these sacred sites and to the indigenous peoples along the border. Verlon, do you want to add to that to the question?
So what can you do? That question comes up all the time. And number one that we continue to say, and I continue to advocate for, is to have true consultation with the tribes. Many times things that affect the tribal communities, we're not informed about it, or we're call a meeting, 2 Native Americans show up, check the box, we've consulted with them. You know, the federal bureaucracy and the state, and sometimes the local, are not always what it's supposed to be. And most of the time, it's like, hey, let's get some Indians together, and we'll say that we consulted with the tribes. And so we always ask for true consultation. Now, Dr. Trujillo and I, we don't answer for our tribes, but being in the elected officials previously, tribes across the United States, and actually in other countries too, is like, hey, include us. We were here. We're here. You're affecting us one way or another, but it's only the high-powered, high-dollar people that are always included at the table. So how can you make sure that tribes are included? Make sure that you truly understand. Most Native people, I know for the Tohono O'odham, is that we've always been open to sit down at the table and have those discussions. So what can you do? Educate, educate yourselves, educate others. We're willing, we as tribes are willing to educate as much as we can. And that's what I say all the time. No one, and I'll put it this way. When the Department of Homeland Security was created, I asked who came up with this magnificent plan that you call it Homeland Security. And the federal officials in Washington, D.C. and others, our experts came up with it. Our experts, you know, in Washington and so forth, blah, blah, with all the intel and the data and so forth. And we came up with, well, actually, the Department of Homeland Security was a knee-jerk reaction to 9/11. But you know what? The experts that designed this never once spoke to the experts, the tribal communities that live and see this on day to day. And after, I think the federal government, not that I think, I know the federal government wasting millions, billions of dollars of your money, of our money, the taxpayers' money, on numerous failed attempts to secure America, and are still failing today because they never included the experts. They never included the people that live on or along the border. They just came in through and we're going to take this and we're going to do what we need. So, in short, is to include the tribal communities, be inclusive, not only on the tribal communities, but on individual ranchers and private landowners and other organizations and entities that have a true concern on the border. I think we can really secure America if we work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Verlon. And Octaviana, do you have any concluding remarks before we formally introduce Verlon?
Thank you again, everyone, to be for being part of this important conversation. You know, we live in Southern Arizona, and we are very familiar with many of the issues that face us as citizens, and we love our country, and we enjoy the lifestyles that we have and the freedom that we have. And I would hope that everyone engages in how what's going on nationally, and certainly here in the state of Arizona, how our opportunities for who we are as individuals, and the collective good can really be dampened, and a blow to who we want to be as a community with the current legislation before us. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Octaviana, for your insights sharing with us today. Verlon Jose is a recognized expert on the Arizona-Mexico border where he lives. He is chairman of the Chikutkuk district of the Tohono Nation, a district which covers a sizable portion of the Arizona-Mexico border. He is a past vice chair of the Tohono Nation and currently is president of the nation's Babakivri School District. He's a multifaceted, multi-talented individual. Welcome, Vernon. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good day to each and every one of you. I need to make one correction. I am not the chairman of the Chikutkuk district. I was the chairman of the Chikutkuk district a few years ago. Currently, I am the governor of the Tohono O'odham leaders, the traditional O'odham leaders of Mexico. It's an appointed traditional position, and among other hats that I wear, but I'm Verlon Jose.
All right, thank you for the correction.
So, so to really truly understand these, I think, and I always tell people, is that you have to understand where we came from to get to where we're at today. This just didn't happen overnight. This just didn't happen 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 4 years ago, whenever. So the impacts of the border, for us, I think records indicate it was 1540 when Coronado crossed over O'odham territory, you know, and 1686 when Kino was sent to New Spain, you know, and there was so much history about to where we get to today, you know, with Mexico independence in the 1800s, you know, and the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which moved the boundary from where the Gila River is today, kind of central Arizona. That was where the boundary was at one point, and then the Gaston Purchase would put the boundary right now where it is today. And someone talked about, and that's where things really, the Gaston Purchase were $10 million, you know, the United States government, 1854. That is where the United States government actually really drew a line in the middle of our homelands. Some people call us nomadic. I defer to call ourselves nomadic because I think nomadic is people with no homes. We have multiple homes. We travel to wherever the food was. Winter really, no disrespect, but I said this once, and somebody I said I was being disrespectful. I said, we were the original snowbirds of Arizona, meaning that, you know, hey, wintertime we have a home, summertime we have a home, and it wasn't, you know, just now that people come to Arizona for the nice weather's over. Anyway, but because we weren't here in certain times, people said, oh, nobody lives there. But a lot of these things, and there was a question about why tribes didn't sue the federal government on the wall. I will make it clear. I just came from the border just before I got online. There is not a 30-foot wall on the 62 miles of international boundary that the Tohono O'odham Nations has on the southern boundary. There is no wall. There is a vehicle barrier, which the local folks, the districts, the nation is divided by 11 districts, and the Tohono O'odham Nation has supported. So there's no wall on the Tohono O'odham Nation's 62 miles of international boundary. There is vehicle barriers in some areas where it was deemed most appropriate. There are integrated fixed towers that were also approved there that were just I think they were finalized, several months ago, and they're getting ready to turn them over to the Department of Homeland Security. But somebody asked about a lawsuit. I mean, why the tribes didn't sue the government? So, in after 1854, they got some purchase. In 1907, I believe, somewhere around there, uh, the federal government created what they called the Roosevelt Reservation. It's a 60-foot strip of land on the border. And there used to be a fence line there, and it was, as I was younger, I would say that I used to go with my dad and my grandpa. I never knew I was going into another country, or we're going to grandma's house, or we're going to the community, and we cross a barbed wire fence, or some places no fence at all. And I know it's going to Mexico. Well, that was created with the Roosevelt boundary, and then when they put in 2006, when they did the vehicle barriers, they moved the boundary as far south as they could, because that Roosevelt boundary was a strip, 60-foot strip. It was kind of like a buffer zone. And through some of the information I received and the research, one person put it this way. Well, they back then, and we don't know because this was like 1900, 1907, they put a buffer there because if the U.S. cavalry was in pursuit of, someone, or maybe the Mexican military, they wanted to stop before they went into international territory. I don't know whether it was true, but sounds about right. So when the federal government said, well, we have a right of way, we have this Roosevelt boundary, Don Automation, you start after that 60-foot, and then that's your trust land. Now, I got to remember that the Don Automation, the tribes do not own land. Well, some tribes own private land, but on the reservations, it's trust land. Even if we bought it and we want to utilize it, we have to put it in trust. The federal government then becomes, we're dependent of the federal government, because under the Indian Organization Act, we accepted those terms, and for the United States government to recognize it. Well, in any event, we, the Thorn Automation, the local district, Chukwuku district, which is my district, and the local communities worked with the Department of Homeland Security, Border Patrol. There is no wall. And yes, I am the one that said over my dead body would a wall be built. I don't look forward to dying, and I'm glad that there's not a wall. But there is a wall. There is a wall east and west of the 62 miles. And most importantly, on the video that you saw, one of our sacred sites in Quito, Baquito Springs. That is located in the Organ Pipe National Monument. One of the reasons why the previous guy that was the president of the United States, which you probably know, that was easy for him to do because it was already on federal lands. It was a national park. So he just gave the directive and they built that wall. Not even consulting with the tribe or the affected indigenous communities in the area. Total devastation on those areas where the wall went up. And even to the fact that they dynamited, they blew up sacred burial grounds. Human remains, cremations were blown to smithereens, to put up this 30-foot wall. And many elders, cry every time they look at it. Many elders feel very sad. Not even elders, young people as well, feel very sad when they see that, because it is like someone got a knife and just dragged it across our heart. They really damaged Mother Earth. And I said, would you go to your mother and get a knife and drag it across her heart, or put a heavy 30-foot wall across your mother's heart? Because that's what you've done to us. And then would you go down and bulldoze, run over all your children, all your family, because that's what you've done to us when you destroy the Saguaro, the Hashan, that is very sacred to us and deemed as a person in our culture and tradition. Would you do that? You know, it is what it is, you know, and it's about really about educating the people. Border issues have always been here and they'll always be here. People ask me, if you had a magic wand and could fix all the border issues, what would you do? I said, well, I think there's two major things that we need to do. Number one, America needs to kick its drug habit. We're going to be spending billions and billions of dollars on a 30-foot wall. Why don't we direct those resources to the cities and towns across America and the tribal nation? Because the drugs and coming through the Tohono Nation aren't intended for the reservation. Maybe some gets left here, but they're intended for the cities and towns of America. They're intended to Washington, D.C. They're intended, so wherever there's a demand, there's going to be a supply. I don't know if America will kick its drug habit in my time, probably not. So the second thing that we need to do in America is to have true immigration reform. True immigration reform, because this place that you call the United States of America, it is a melting pot. It is United States, quote unquote, united. You know, we've been dealing with, the indigenous people of the Americas have been dealing with this since, and which is still in order, which is still law that even the United States Supreme Court cited the doctrine of discovery when they sent, you know, when they sent them out to look for new lands, New Spain, and so forth. That the doctrine of discovery is still on the books. That's what started our problems. Not only the doctrine of discovery, but manifest destination. Manifest destination by the United States government. You know, kill the end and save the man. That's why they tried to assimilate us. They tried to kill our language, kill our traditions, kill our songs, take our land, and assimilate us into mainstream Americana or whatever. But we held on to that, and we still hold on to that very dearly. The cartel issues are very real. I mean, right now we're having a autumn census on the border. I just left there earlier. And some of the people can't even go to their communities because they've been chased out by the cartel. To do that, to their business, whatever it is that they do. But you know what? Mexico is no different than the United States. And when they talk about this wall, when they talk about, you know, the killers and everybody coming across the southern border, and we need to put up this wall, my question to America is, all these mass shootings that went on, schools, movie theaters, farmers markets, Walmart, how many of those people that killed Americans, how many of them came across the southern border? No one has answered that question yet. And I think we all know the answer. None of them. They were all from what you call America. And so if you start tracing that back, and the Tohono is desert, autumn is people. We've always been hospitable people. We've always accepted people with open arms. You know, my son, who is actually the vice chairman of the district, was a teacher, and he was doing 500 years of history of the Tohono Autumn. And I asked him, so what are you teaching the kids? What are you teaching your students? He said, 500 years of autumn history. I said, okay, what are you telling them? Well, we accepted the church, and then we fought against the church. And then we accepted the church again, and then we burned down the churches. And then we accepted the church again. So in a snapshot, that's really has been our history, you know, and even to the US, after the Gadsden Purchase. Why did they do the Gadsden Purchase? Because everybody was going west to find gold. Go west and find gold. And they were going over the Rocky Mountains, and they couldn't handle the harsh winters, and people were dying, and people weren't able to go. And they sent an expedition out, and they found, oh, we found another way to go west. And we don't have to go over big mountains. Southern Pacific Railway, so they came through our territory where we were living. And then they have an allotment act. Okay, we're going to give Native Americans a piece of land, and we're going to teach them how to farm, and we're going to teach them how to do this and that. We were expert farmers already to begin with. 4,000 or 5,000 years of history in Arizona proves that we were here and that we were farmers for that long. So the United States was trying to teach us something that we already knew, but they never once came to ask us and work with us. They came and told us. I mean, I thought this was a democracy. I thought that this was not a dictatorship union. But so there are many issues that we face, too many issues that I can tell you in the short time that I have here. We've always faced it, border issues. We face it today. We work with the United States Border Patrol, but in the same token, we're the criminals. Everyone is a criminal in their eyes. Some are okay, and some treat us very with respect. Others treat us like better than dogs, like the priest that came and treated us. So we continue to cross the border, and we'll continue to cross the border because, as they say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. And we talk about some of the congressional things that are going on in the United States. You know, President Biden introduced the U.S. Citizenship Act of 2021 that's going to call for citizenship for 11 million some immigrants, and not one of them is Tohono. So we're also looking to introduce the Tohono citizenship, which we tried to do in 2001, never got out of committee. 9/11 happened, nothing went anywhere. Again, 2003, we tried to introduce it, in 2013, but it never got out of committee. And we're going to attempt to do that again. Is that going to satisfy all our border issues? No. But we have members that live right across the line there, an imaginary line to us. So we try to attempt to work closely with CBP and other agencies dealing with, you name it, from A to Z. What do we need to do? How do we repair and mitigate the damage that the wall has done? Again, have the true consultations. We like a seat at the table, and let's work together to repair that. Tear down the wall in areas that it needs to be torn down, and maybe leave it up in some areas that it should stay up. But we should not interrupt the migratory patterns of the animals. That is our responsibility. As Tohono, our basic responsibility is to care for one another, to care for the land, and to care for the animals. Animals have lives too. And when we cut off their migratory patterns, we're killing our brothers and sisters that walk on four legs or that crawl and so forth. So in short, I have so much to share with you, but I was just trying to climate change. And right now I volunteer deliver medical supplies to Mexico. Our people living in Mexico is very challenging in Mexico. And we try to work with them to work. We're a binational, trinational tribe. And so the smuggling, I was actually talking to 3 Border Patrol probably about 2 hours ago, and they didn't know the history of the Tohono. And while I was standing there on the Mexico side and they were standing on the US side, I gave them a brief history and they said, wow, we never knew this. And I'm like, and you're United States Border Patrol? They should put you through some kind of training or some kind of history class so you can know these things. They said, no, we never knew this, but we're just here to guard the border. Well, good. Well, I'm here to cross the border, and so I hope we work together. In short, again, I could go on and on, but the border issues are real. There is no wall on the 62 miles of international boundary. There is a wall in our Aboriginal lands because our Aboriginal lands of the Autumn stretch from Hermosillo, Sonora to Phoenix, Arizona, from the San Pedro River on the east to the Rio Colorado on the west to the Sea of Cortez is the footprint of the Autumn. And we didn't divide ourselves. Foreign governments divided us. So thank you for the opportunity. My contact, I can put my contact later on, but there is so much to share to understand who we are as Stone Autumn, who we are as Indigenous people, the Yaquis, the Cocopas, you know, all the other tribes that face the issues together. We do unite, and someone said if they built that wall in the Stone Autumn Nation, that probably is going to be the last Indian war of the Americas, because we'll come and we'll stand with you. But I say we no longer fight with bows and arrows. Right now we fight with our mind, our education. We're learning the games of the foreign governments. Where people go to Washington no longer with the peace pipe anymore. They go with attorneys. Everybody shows up with their attorney, you know. So thank you. We hope to work together, continue. What I say, I like to build bridges, not walls.
Thank you, Verlon. I'm sure you could tell us more, couldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see a question in the chat that says, how can I church help local tribe, food assistant, right? I work with nonprofit organizations in Tucson and abroad, you know, Phoenix and Casa Grande, food banks that will call me up and so forth, and we'll get food and distribute it to the tribal communities and to our members in Mexico, which have even more challenging. And so we're always open to that. And we even started before the pandemic. A person reached out to me and said, you know, Verlon, I'd like to help and put produce on the tables of the tribal folks. Yeah, so we would do it was called Market on the Move. We'd do an event and people would come and get produce, you know, and so forth. We'd have some raffles and so forth that, trying to get fresh vegetables and different things on there. But whenever we get a call from a food bank, we'll go pick it up and we'll get it to those communities that need it. And the question always asked, well, your tribe has casinos, right? You got like millions and millions of dollars? Yeah, millions and millions of dollars are pennies in the bucket. I mean, when it costs over $1 million to pave a mile of road, and we got hundreds of miles of road, we can't even pave our roads, our infrastructure. So anyway, people think that we're very, very rich Native Americans because we have casinos. We're still trying to build our infrastructure. So be happy to, if you do have donations and other things, be happy to connect, always. And if I can't do it, I can point you to someone else that can.
And at the end, you can give us how to connect with you, I would assume. Here's a question, 2 questions, 3 questions. What water issues do the tribes face is one. Can you answer that one for us or no?
Yeah. Well, I think the overarching water issue is climate change. You know, and I can tell you maybe over 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, I was sitting at a traditional meeting where the elder talked about everything that was going to happen, and the land and the changings and so forth. And so we as Autumn have to continue our cultures and tradition because there's a reason for it. In terms of water, water is the new liquid gold. You know, water, every cities and towns, if you don't know that the individual members of the Autumn Nation actually sued the city of Tucson, which actually ended up becoming the Southern Arizona Water Settlements Right Act, where we eventually sued the federal government. And so we get CAP water. We've done a water study here on the nation. It's not public information. Our water is, we got water. It's deemed in some areas not up to standards where it's drinkable because maybe too much arsenic or other chemicals in the water. But if it's treated, we can do that. Some of the water issues that we have mainly along the border in one area is the Mexican farmers, ranchers. Farmers actually are depleting the water tables. And we have those discussions with Mexico. The cities and towns, Tucson, Phoenix, Casa Grande, and everybody is hurting for water. And as you know, Arizona is developing. We're not declining, we're developing more. Problem is, where are we going to get the water? So a lot of people look to the tribal nations for their water and so forth. So in terms of what issues do we have with water, I think, again, we need to, we will protect our water. We will continue to, but the Arizona government continues to chip away at a federal agreement, federal law that gave us a percentage of the CAP. And as you know, the CAP, the Colorado River is going dry as well too. So we need to continue to work together to protect those sources. And that way, the Tohono, not only Tohono, but tribes can get what is rightfully due to them. Thank you.
Not an easy one, maybe it is. What call to action can we support you with?
The call to action that you can support us are, I think right now, the top two would be against the call to action to heal the border. In order for us to heal the border, we must heal ourselves. We must understand these reasons. Why is it that a wall is not going to work? And I think that's pretty easy because walls across the world have not worked. The Berlin Wall, the Great Wall of China, look at those things and tell me if they were 100% effective. Maybe to some degree, but they're not. To understand those things that a wall is not the answer, that we need to continue as the federal government and the local jurisdictions to really take a look at it and advocate for the right thing. And what one person deems the right thing may be different for the next person. So collectively, we need to learn and work together to repair, to heal the border, and take down the wall in places that is most appropriate. Second thing I call to action would be is Dr. Trujillo talked about the For the People Act and so forth, but I personally would ask for your support when it gets to that level to support the Tohono citizenship, making all enrolled members of the Tohono Nation citizens of the United States. Why? Because, again, some of our members were born in a village when there's no hospital nearby. Some of them were born in Tucson under a tree, which now is a parking lot for a grocery store or something like that, because some were born in Mexico. But again, cost back and forth. And because my grandfather, who passed away about 7 years ago, who served in the United States military, served on the USS Mississippi, and told me I had the privilege of being a personal guard to this man named Jimmy Carter. You know, maybe you like him, maybe you don't. And he asked me, do you know him? I said, oh yeah, he was one of the presidents. Anyway, he said, but you know what? They never asked me for my birth certificate. They never asked me if I was a citizen of this country. They drafted me. So I asked for your call to action when we get it out there to Congress to support the Tohono Citizenship Act. I would at least ask in those two measures.
All right, thank you.
I do have, and I can put it up in our newsletter going out on a week from Monday. So if you would like their contact information, watch our newsletter, and I'll make sure that it gets posted there. So.
I put my email, rjose.ckd@gmail.com. and also put my cell number in there. So feel free to reach out to me. And I do want to say thank you to the White Elephant, I think it is, in Green Valley. They call me up from time to time to provide some donations. And also the Green Valley Food Bank. They call me up from time to time to pick up some food there. So, you know, prayers and to everyone there, and thank you for the opportunity.
All right, thank you for being here. It's really a privilege, Verlon, to see you.
Thank you, Joshua Simhoigut. That means God bless you in our language. Y'all have a great day.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you both.
All right.
Verlon and Octaviana, you have both helped us to see the world as you see the world. Thank you.